All right, guys. So today we're gonna talk about why anime is the hardest domain, and yeah. But this is like our new this is like our new setup. I mean, this is like my old house, right? So this is the house that I grew up in. So this is like my room. So I've kind of had this uh setup before I went to my apartment because usually I film these videos at my apartment, right? Which is basically where I do college, where I'm at university. But with this, this is like my home. You know what I mean? So this is like the room I used to grow up in. So yeah. But anyway, we're gonna talk about why anime is actually like one of the hardest domains to master. Like in any language, actually. Like when I just compare it to other languages, it's honestly crazy how much of a detour you're gonna have to take to master all genres of anime. Because one thing I've noticed is that anime uses like a very wide range of vocabulary. So it's not just wide in terms of its genres; it also goes pretty deep, right? So it has breadth and depth of vocabulary. Now, what I mean, well, with some anime, like they use a ton of literary words, right? So that's one. Um, and that's what makes it like that much harder because sometimes anime they use a lot of literary words and there's roughly like 10,000, right, literary words specifically that they use across all animes. Now obviously, like, the easier the anime, the less literary words will show up, and the higher difficulty anime, like those literary words will appear more often. But that's like another like that's another 10,000 words that you have to learn from purely literary words, and then you don't even count the genre specific words. So there's like samurai vocabulary, there's sci-fi, there's fantasy vocabulary, right? When you watch Attack on Titan, you're gonna notice that like there's a lot of military vocabulary, a lot of politic vocabulary. So like and that's besides. So then there's like an extra 10,000 words you have to know. So when it comes to like mastering spoken Japanese, right? When it comes to like mastering like everyday Japanese, that you live in the Japan, right? You only need to really know like 10,000 words, right? That's like the amount of word like that's the word count you need to know to like master spoken Japanese, right? Which will only require 10 words. But if you want to master all anime and light novels specifically, you're going to need to know like 30,000 words, 35,000 words. And like I said, it mainly has to come down to learning another 10,000 words from genres, right? So military vocabulary, politics, sci-fi, fantasy. Like there's all these crazy, amounts of words you got to know. And then, so that's the breadth. And then there's the depth, right? Where it goes into literary words. So now you have to learn like another 10,000 literary words that they use in anime. So, that's actually partially the reason why I felt like my progress in Japanese was actually pretty slow. And the reason why it was slow is because I didn't realize how hard anime really was. Like, what I mean, well, I'll learn like a word in a fantasy domain, right? I'll be watching like, maybe a fantasy, anime or manga, and then I'll go all of a sudden go to slice of life. And this dramatic shift in genre basically exposed me to a separate set of vocabulary that was not related. So the words that would be used in a slice of life anime and the words that would be used in like a fantasy anime were completely different and they didn't overlap, right? Like the vocabularies were very domain specific. So, my brain was probably kind of confused because I just literally immersed in anything, right? And that's the problem. Like that's what I realized. Like that was one mistake I made with Japanese was I didn't focus on one domain at a time when I was learning Japanese. I just like immersed in every domain. And the problem with that is all anime have different levels of difficulty. So like I should have avoided the hard animes first, instead of trying to watch anything because I had a perception that like all anime were like at the same level of difficulty and that like like, but that's not even true at all. Like an anime like Fairy Tail, an anime like Fate Zero, even though they're both fantasy like genre, the level of difficulty is insanely different. Like Fairy Tail, they use literary word terms sometimes, but it's like very minimal. Whereas like you watch Fate Zero, and they're saying a bunch of words you don't know. So that's the thing, right? There's a huge like yeah. So that's one problem with anime is like there's a huge level of difficulty, and you have to learn another 20,000 words on top of spoken Japanese. Like let's say you're already fluent in Japanese and you never got exposed to anime, you need to learn like another 20,000 words to master the highest difficulty of anime. So if you wanted to watch like Fate Zero or like Legend of Galactic Heroes, your vocabulary will need to expand by another 20,000 to master all the genres, right? And know all the literary vocabularies, because there's roughly 10,000 words you need to know from all the domain-specific genres, and another 10,000 words you need to know for literary terms, right? And that's the problem. But so like, so this right here is Fate Zero, right? And Fate Zero is like a higher end light novel in difficulty. But this right here is Japanese literature. This is like a Japanese literary book. Now, for you to master this, like once you master spoken Japanese, you'd only need to know an additional probably like a couple thousand words, right? And this is because literary Japanese, right? Like, Japanese like literature, just normal literature, they don't use a vast vocabulary like anime does, right? They're very, they use a lot of literary terms, of course, but you can pick that up really easily because they often repeat the same things, right? So because like literally, like, with something like this, like once you memorize all the words in here, you can go to a different, book. Like, for example, like there's a Natsume Soseki. This is a Natsume Soseki no Kokoro. This is often regarded as a high-end literary novel. But if you memorize all the words in here, you're most likely gonna master this because they overlap. Like, the literary words, like in all the, they overlap. But the problem is, if you're to master Fate Zero, ReZero, so if you're to memorize all the words in here, and then you were to go to like, Classroom Delete, or you were to go to like Oregairu, like a slice of life light novel, there will be a ton of other words you want to know, right? So just because you master one light novel does not, like, you memorize all the words in here, does not mean you know all the words in another light novel, because like I said, the breadth and is like insane. They use a high range of vocabulary. Another 20,000 words you have to know. Whereas like when I compare it to other languages, like French, for example, like if you want to master French literature, like after you master spoken French, you do not need to know another 20,000 words. You only need to know like maybe another 10,000, and specifically 10,000 words that are literary. So you see what I mean? And I think same with the Quran. Like, I looked at Arabic, and even though like, going from, let's say, Egyptian dialect to mastering like classical Arabic, you still need to know a significant amount of words. Like, you need to know like roughly like 15,000. Like if you mastered like Egyptian Arabic, like you would roughly need to know like 15,000 more words to master classical Arabic in the Quran, right? Which is still significant, right? It's still a lot, but it's not as much as like this. It's not as much as anime. And that's the problem, right? I got myself into one of the hardest domains to master. Like, I got into one of the hardest literary domains in language, which is anime. And that's the thing with anime. They like to use all these fancy terms and all these fancy literary expressions, and they like to speak it too. That's the problem. Like, usually like, spoken language is only, spoken language. Like people would speak like the way, you speak in real life, but it's like when you watch anime, they're like speaking novels. They're speaking literary terms. They're speaking all these complex sentence structures. They're like speaking what they would speak in, like what they would like write in literature. Like what you would have in here, like anime characters just speak what's in here. You know what I mean? So it's like it's very problematic. Because you have to learn a ton of words, and that's the problem, because I thought that I could master, watching anime, because I thought like if I mastered anime, I knew anime was like a little bit harder than conversational Japanese, but I did not know the extent of how much harder it was. Like, it's like literally 3 times like more vocabulary you have to know compared to like daily slice of life, conversational Japanese. Like if I wanted to get fluent in just Japanese, like on the streets, like I said, I would only need to know like maybe 10,000 words to be completely mastered that aspect of language. But then you add on anime in light novels, you're gonna have to know another 20,000. It's like the gap is just too huge, right? And that's probably why like my progress is pretty slow, because like I said, like I wasn't consuming comprehensible input at all. Like I was consuming like hard content, and I didn't realize how hard it was until like I got close to mastering it, right? Like for example, I'm at a point now where like I'm really close to mastering like advanced literary works, right? Now like the thing, the differences between this is that if I were to read this right now, there'll still be words I don't know, and that's because when it comes to Nihongo no bunko, right? They use very specific literary words that are only used in this type of genre of Japanese and not used in light novels. So now, because I have like a lot of because I already know a lot of literary terms already, I'll be able to just like learn the couple thousand words I need to know to master this type of domain, right? Like I might need to know like another extra like probably 4,000 words for me to like master this type of book. Like so, I'll be able to read this book, but I might have to use a dictionary for some of the words in here. So it's not like I know every word in here, but like when I read this, like I'll pretty much know like every single word in here. Even though this is harder, like in terms of breadth and depth, like the vocabulary here is very specific and it's often repeated. So that's why like, actually ReZero Light Novel is actually harder than Natsume Soseki. Even though like in terms of vocab, I'm talking about in terms of vocab because this might be hard in terms of complex sentences, but I feel like even this like, even like a light novel like ReZero, like they use a lot of like poetic prose, like a lot of literary complex structures in its writing. So like even like light novels are not easy either. So that's what I realized. Like light novels are actually harder than normal novels, right? And then harder than classical Japanese because I looked at classical Japanese and even though classical Japanese grammar is very different, the words tend to repeat, which means that there's a certain domain set of words that are only used in classical Japanese, and if you just learn those couple thousand words, then you're good. But with Japanese anime, if you're to learn like a couple thousand words, like that's not enough, bro. You gotta learn like even more thousands of words, right, for different genres, and especially if you want to master all literary contexts. So that's the problem with anime is like it's just so difficult, and that's why like if you guys are learning Japanese to understand anime, I just want you guys to understand what you're getting yourself into. You're getting yourself into one of the hardest domains of language to master. So that's the thing, because even though you can master easy anime and intermediate anime. So what does that mean? Like easy anime is like slice of life anime, shonen anime. That's like Naruto, like very easy anime. And then the intermediate anime would be like maybe Hunter x Hunter, Attack on Titan. Like these would be examples of intermediate anime. You can master those anime like relatively quickly. But if you want to master like the advanced anime, like if you want to be able to watch like Legend of Galactic Heroes, if you want to be able to watch Fate Zero, Ghost in the Shell, like those high advanced tier anime, like you're gonna need to have like an insane vocabulary, right? And especially if you want to read high end works like these, because here's the thing, bro. Like I decided to pick up Anki and pick up Japanese again, just because like I had trouble reading this last year. Like I read this last year, and like I was just having trouble reading it. Like even though I was understanding the plot and what was happening, there's still a lot of details that I was missing, right? Which meant that my ability was not enough to fully comprehend this. Now, my ability back then, if I read Konosuba, like, let's see, if I read a light novel like this, or Mushoku Tensei, or Classroom Elite, like if I read these books, dude, like actually it would be too easy. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'll be able to read this no problem. Like, at the level that I stopped learning, because, I stopped learning Japanese like intensively 2 years ago, right? 2.5 years ago, right? And I was able to read this comfortably. I was at a level where I was able to watch intermediate anime, easy anime, and understand almost everything, right? Same with this. Like I could read this and like this would be a joke, right? In terms of vocab. But I couldn't read this comfortably. There was a big gap between this and this, right? And that's when I realized like, okay, my Japanese is not enough. Because even though I like sort of mastered intermediate anime, when I would watch like harder anime, like I watched like Pluto, I didn't understand what the heck was going on. Like I was like, I didn't even understand the plot. I was like, dude, what the fuck is this? I watched like Neon Evangelion Genesis, and there was still like a lot of words and like there's a couple words in there like I didn't know. I was like, wait, what? I was like shocked. I was like, I thought I mastered all anime, but I watched like Evangelion, which is actually like a very advanced anime. Like, okay, here's the thing. Even if you understand all the words in Evangelion, you still won't understand the story. So like the actual story itself is complex, not just the language. So like the language it already being hard doesn't help, So, but like so that's what I realized. Like, okay, my Japanese needs to step up now. That's why I started to bring back Anki, and start mining words again. Because I was rereading like the Berserk manga, and there were like a couple handful of words I didn't know. Like I wasn't comfortable reading. So, when it comes to high level end animes, I was not comfortable, right? Now, of course, like I could read like easy light novels. I could read most light novels, right? But when it came to reading like the high level light novels like these, I couldn't read this comfortably. So like, I didn't fully master the advanced types of anime, after a year, two half years of hard work. So that's why I decided to bring it back, right, and refine my Japanese, like, right now for a little bit longer, so that I could reach that advanced level, so that, like, I wouldn't have to worry about me not understanding a few words, because there were still like a couple of rare words and literary words that, like, I forgot and that, like, I didn't internalize. What I want to do is I want to turn and convert all this conscious knowledge I might have for literary terms, and I want to internalize it through acquisition, through watching, like, reading a ton of harder anime, or like reading a ton of harder light novels like this. I might have to reread this, just to make sure, like, I master this type of genre, and also, like, watch harder anime. So that's the thing, guys. But anime is a really hard genre to master, guys. Like, if you guys just want to get fluent in Japanese, like I said, you only need to know like 10,000 words, right, to be completely fluent in Japanese, in basic spoken Japanese. Now, if you want to master anime like this, or like you want to watch, Fate Zero anime without any subtitles and understand everything and all the literary terms that are used, you're gonna have to learn another 20,000 words on top of your spoken Japanese. So you're gonna need to know in total 30,000 to 35,000 words if you want to truly understand all domains of anime. And that's the thing. So that's what you're gonna have to get you guys into. That's what you guys are, need to get yourself into. Now, like I said, you don't need to know this many words if you just plan to only consume like easy to intermediate anime, right? But the moment you enter into high level anime, or the moment you enter into higher level light novels, you're going to need to know like another 10,000 words. Because, like, for this, like, I could read this at a vocabulary of like 20,000. Like, I think 20,000, 15,000 words would be like necessary for you to read like an easy light novel like this. But if you want to read this comfortably, you're gonna need to know like 25,000, 30,000 words. So it's like a different level of vocabulary you're gonna need to do. So, and for me, like, I want to be able to read like at least most light novels and comfortably read it without necessarily relying on too much of a dictionary. Like, I'm not opposed to the idea of looking up a word if I don't know it, but I just don't want there to be so many frequent lookups when I'm reading a freaking book, when I'm trying to just enjoy it. You know what I mean? Like, for example, like, I can read this without a dictionary, right? But if I were to read like maybe a higher level light novel like this, I might have to look up a couple words in here, right? So like, I just don't want that. I just don't want to have to like keep doing that. So that's why, like, for me, like, despite my Japanese being already really good, it hasn't been perfected because I just didn't realize how hard anime could be, right? The higher end anime. Of course, like, you can master intermediate anime fast, but it's like, if you want to master that advanced anime, it's like, you're going to need to know like another 10,000 words. And that's the problem. So yeah, guys. But I think for me to master the advanced anime, it's not going to take too long. Because I recently just watched like all the episodes of Legend of Galactic Heroes. And like, guys, I memorized every single word in the anime, like every single word. And I got like roughly like 200 cards, 200 words that I didn't know from the anime, right? I like memorized like every single word I didn't know. And yeah, I was able to get like 200 words. But it was funny because in the beginning of the series of Legend of Galactic Heroes, I literally was like I was like, oh my god, like my brain was like frying because it was like complicated Japanese and like extreme formal grammar and documentary style type of tone. So it was like using extremely high level Japanese. And for me at the beginning, I was having hard comprehending it. I was like, oh my god, there's like so many words I don't know. But by the end of the series, like, it was super comfortable. Like, all this hard Japanese that was, for me, it was hard at the beginning, but when I reached the end of the series, it got really easy. Like, it got a lot easier, right? It got I was able to comprehend that level of Japanese, like, even it was a lot easier to comprehend it. So yeah, guys, it's like I can really feel my growth when it comes to, at least with Legend of Galactic Heroes. So yeah, guys, but that's my thing for anime. It's one of the hardest domains to master. So make sure, like, when you're learning it, like, get yourself prepared.